Welcome to the DSPN.
He's given him. Well, there you go. He was forward.
Oh, a punch up now in midfield. Fraser's involved.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the podcast, people. DSPN, Martin, Devlin, Lachlan Waugh. Talking all the day's big sports stories. Special guests on the show. Tony Kemp in his rugby league slot. Miles Davis doing the big blah, blah. Some of the topics that we're going to tackle today. Rugby kicking off this weekend. Super Bowl ticket prices. TGL Golf. NRL in Vegas. A statue of Novak outside of Melbourne Park. Jimmy Butler doing the Marcus Rashford. And what is a 2340 and why is it so amazing? We kick the show off the same way every day. Sermon from the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
If ever there's been a great example of global expansion killing a sport, then it has to be rugby sevens. The clamour to have sevens included in the Olympics, which when you watch every 4 years is awesome. I've got to point that out. But it's also meant outside of that event, it's now lost any real relevance that it once had. You take away the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics and ask yourself, when was the last time you watched a sevens circuit event? Me? I've got to say, I don't even know they're on, literally. I went to the pub, full-time sports bar here in Auckland last Friday after work, and there it was on the biggest screen, sevens rugby. What tournament is this? I asked a guy at the next table. Perth, he said. Is it a replay? I naively asked. No, he laughed. It's on live. Who would have known? Honestly, who would know? And I'm not being a dick, and I'm not being down on the sport by asking that. I work in the sports media, and I genuinely had no idea it was on. Sevens is no longer compulsive viewing, and it hasn't been for years. Unless you're a player, a family or a friend of, or somebody working for World Rugby promoting it or broadcasting it, do you actually care who won the Perth Sevens or the tournament before that? Can you even name what tournament it was before that? How many events are on the circuit these days? Where are they? You ask any sports fan you know, and I bet they can't answer those questions. The marquee tournaments used to be Hong Kong and Wellington. Both of those have now been axed from the circuit. And that definitely started the rot here. The fun police in Wellington woking it to death. And even though it was on at the pub last Friday, within 10 minutes of me sitting down, the channel was changed to watch the Celtics-Lakers NBA. And not a single soul objected. No one. Sevens is dying, people, if it's not already dead. Maybe it's a sport that's just run its course. It costs an absolute fortune to run this World Series, and for how much longer do you think that World Rugby are going to fund it? Maybe then we can stop this idiocy of calling our men's team the All Blacks Sevens, because that's embarrassing. It should never have happened. Quite possibly the worst decision New Zealand rugby's ever made. As shameful as the team bearing that name, losing to Uruguay for the first ever time in Perth.
DSPN.
Wednesday Rugby League. Our great mate Tony Kemp joins us again. 25 tests for the Kiwis, glittering career in both hemispheres, and also, of course, coach the Warriors. Welcome back, Tone.
Too nice, Marty.
Kurt Cable was on the podcast on Monday, and I want to play you a couple of quotes from this interview to kick it off with. The first one about whether or not the Warriors were fit enough last year.
I don't feel like we were probably fit enough last year. We definitely had the skill and the game to beat other teams, but I just don't think, as you said, we couldn't maintain it for the full 80 minutes. So you can imagine that fitness has been one of the top priorities of this preseason, and as unenjoyable as it is, it's set us up now to hopefully, as I said, start the year well.
How revealing is that? I'm saying that.
It's interesting, isn't it, Marty? You know, like if I was sitting there as, I guess, a staff member, especially in the performance part of the club, where we're obviously in charge of making sure that the players are prepared and ready to go out there and play 80 minutes of football, I'd be pretty upset listening to something like that. And to come out, you know, basically 2 weeks before the season kicks off and say we're a hell of a lot fitter this year. It's a bit of a shot across the bow of the coaching staff and the performance staff. So,
let's not read too much into it though. But do you think that now hearing that kind of explains why we were dropping off at the end of games? We'd start like a rocket last year, like so many games, even the opener against Cronulla. And I remember Melbourne first 15 minutes, man. I mean, they couldn't live with us. But by the end of the game, we were just.
Well, it's part of the issue, wasn't it? Is that they were dropping off, and you're right. They started the season and the games pretty well at the first quarter, you know, through to 40 minutes, and then got blown off in the second half of the game. And you can say, well, that was down to fitness, but there's a lot of other pieces that need to go into play here. You know, like your defensive decisions and all that sort of stuff. And if they're going to blame that on not being fit enough, I think that's clutching, to be honest. just one area, because there were a lot of areas that were.
But he wouldn't
that
have
we're
mentioned
missing
it
out on.
if it wasn't something that he's thought about, felt, and actually recognised.
Well, the difference being too, like it's another year at the club for him. How fit was he when he got here? You know, he's even talked about, you know, now that I've been here, you know, and my legs are getting a little bit older, that I do feel fitter, and the younger blokes are around, and you know, it's this type of conversation coming out in the preseason. It's sort of water off a duck's back, really, because if you put that into the I guess the bucket with all the other clubs, have a look at Aiden Whanua-Blake at the moment. All right, he's looked like he's lost 10 to 12 kilos.
Wow.
You know, you're going with Fitzgibbon, who's regarded as one of the fittest coaches in the competition. Bellamy, for instance, Bellyache, they talk about him joining them in the longer stay trips out in the army camps and stuff like that, and doing all the work with them. Ivan's the same. You know, so when you're looking at players being fit and saying, oh, we're a lot fitter than we were last year, well, what you've got to do is you've got to catch the teams that were fit last year and are looking to get fitter again this year. You know what I mean? So for me, saying something like that is a little bit off, because it's throwing a shot at your actual staff that you're working with. If I was your performance manager, mate, I wouldn't be buying him a coffee the next time he came to work.
Well, I look at on the other thing. I look at it kind of from a positive point of view, thinking, wow, if we're a hell of a lot fitter this year, if he thinks we're a hell of a lot fitter this year, well, that should hold us in good stead towards the back end of the season. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, being fit, Marty, and staying injury free is, you know, they're two key components of getting through the season. You know, with you've got the Indigenous. You got two trials. You have got the Indigenous game against the Māoris to kick off. Then you have got 27 odd rounds. Then you have got the finals. Then you've got international at the end of the year. Then you have got a preseason. Then you go again. Know what I mean? So being fit helps you get through all of that season.
And perhaps,
but you got to put it into context. There's 16 other teams too that are that fit.
The other quote asking about the preseason, and when you ever listen to this, Ron, he mentions about the club being a lot more connected this year.
Obviously, it's not the funnest thing, preseason, and the longer it goes, the harder it gets, especially when you get to my age. But what it does, it builds connection, and our squad's probably not been this connected. Well, it definitely wasn't last year. And as I said, those younger boys come through with their energy and bring the good vibes off the field, and it's contagious.
So what do you take from that one there where he says we're definitely more connected? Again, I mean, you can read all kinds of different things into this.
Well, yeah, look, you've lost 5 senior players, you know, so you're talking about connection. You're talking about the value of having, you know, 700-800 NRL games gone, and now you're talking about being more connected than you were last year, because you would have thought that having SJ, Whanua-Blake, Tavaga,
Tohu.
Montoya and Tohu especially, that the team wasn't being connected. So the team...
Maybe he's making more of a reference there to the fact that, you know, we lost SJ. I mean, he'd hardly played last year. Tohu didn't play that much last year.
I think if he had this interview again, capable, he might choose his words a little bit differently, because again, if I was Tohu Harris... I get the Adam Whanua-Blake, because he does throw his toys out of the cot. We saw that on the football field. You know, SJ and him, they obviously had a few clashes last year behind the post when they're going at each other. Tohu Harris, though, isn't that player. You know, his main role as captain, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about captaincy in a minute, was to bring the club together. And I think, if you read what Andrew Webster said when Tohu, you know, hit him with a spade basically when he announced his retirement, a lot of that connectiveness between Tohu and the players is out the window. So what you're saying now, because Tohu's gone, that we're a hell of a lot more connected. Look, I think he might have meant that he's probably, now that we've got a voice, would have been, you know, we've got more of a voice, might be, you know, you haven't got those type of players that are dominating training sessions, you know, dominating being around each other, you know, got the highest profile, you're sitting in your lunchroom and you're too worried to go over there and touch anything, you know what I mean? I think when he's talking about connectiveness, it's more like, God, we're more comfortable, you know, in and around being together, because now we're not afraid to say things. We're not having to worry about those type of guys bearing down on us and holding us accountable type thing. So just a choice of words.
Yeah, you can read all kinds of things into it. I just sort of was fascinated. I wanted to bring those back to you. Talking about the captaincy, how important is it? Look, in so many sports these days, you know, you have co-captains, and it used to be, you know, when men played sport, you had a guy in the dressing room, as you have always said, who led. You had a Mark Graham, or whoever it was. It might have been whoever it was in your teams, okay, that led, and that guy normally picked himself. You know, you didn't actually have to have somebody come in and say you're going to be the captain. Everyone knows in a room who the captain is going to be, right? This day and age, selecting a captain for the Warriors, we'll get into who's it going to be next, but how important is that role? What exactly do they do? Well,
I think when you're looking at the modern day captain, it's not just hey, you're the best person for the job, I'm going to select you as a captain. You know, I think those days are gone, because when you're playing in a multi-million-dollar business, it's more just than going out there and leading a team around the football field for 80 minutes. And I've always said this: when you're looking at criteria for a captain, there's none better and the role model to look at than one Richie McCaw. Okay.
Right, okay.
And I know if you're looking,
took him a while to grow into that role for the All Blacks.
Well, exactly. So, but just the method around selecting Richard, or the methodology around selecting Richie McCaw and helping him grow into what he became, and where he set the benchmark, the All Blacks have had a problem to fill that position ever since. But what it's done for other sports is to go, well, shit, if we get it right, we've got it right on and off the football field.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think the selection around the captain, when you put that into context in New Zealand, is really, really important, because one of the things that we haven't got in this country is structure, or the ability to stop all of our best kids going overseas. Yeah. Now, for me, I think we've got the players in our team to name as a captain. The number one criteria would be, for me, if I was sitting on that captain panel, who's our captain, would be, well, how are we going to get all our kids to choose the Warriors? Because that's what we need to build.
I think Tohu Harris was that guy. He's to me, epitomised that kind of...
Who do you think that guy is now? So let me ask you a question. You're a 10-year-old, you're a 15-year-old, and you're just about to go, well, I want to play the NRL. You've had 3 or 4 years playing in local competitions, which there isn't that many of, and you're looking at the Warriors. Who's that player that keeps you in New Zealand?
I would say if he's been there a couple of years, I would say it would be Fisher Harris, but he's just arrived this year. But he, to me, is that guy. But I don't know whether he's that guy this season because he's just arrived.
So you're every kid up in Northland, yep, and Fisher Harris came through that little structure, and now he's back for the Warriors. Where do you think every kid in Northland wants to play?
Well, they want to play with the Warriors.
Yep, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But every kid that's watching Penrith win competitions in New Zealand, where do you think they want to go?
Well, of course, yeah. They want to go over there.
So the criteria to pick a captain from that perspective is that, first and foremost, let's make sure we try and get all our kids to stay in the competition. But that's that part of it. Then you've got the players. Like, who do the players want to play for? I'm just going to rattle this off here. So you've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I think Roger should be captain because he's on the field for 80 minutes. He's an NRL specialist. He's won numerous
NRL awards. But he's been injured so much last year. Is he going to play every week? That's my worry.
He's got the experience. He's won a competition in the NRL, and of course he hits the criteria of 80 minutes. So if he's not captain, he's going to be a vice captain. Then you got Fisher Harris, won 4 competitions, New Zealand captain, come through the system. He hits all the criteria. Then you've got, of course, who I think will be the captain, Mitch Barnett, who's an Aussie.
Well, he's a follow me kind of guy, isn't he?
Well, he's an Aussie. Played one New South Wales game and three Australian tests, but he's an Aussie. And of course you've got Wade Egan, who's the other 80-minute man. He's an Aussie. He hasn't done anything. And I think that's what you're going to get. You're going to get an Aussie coach choose an Australian to be his captain with an Aussie vice captain. Whereas I think when you're selecting I see personally, I don't think the coach should alone select the captain. I think the owner and the CEO have to have a major say in who their captain is, because the face of rugby league in New Zealand has to do more than that.
Yeah, captain of the Warriors. Yeah,
and I'll put it this way: if Richie McCaw walked into a room of sponsors, who do the sponsors want to talk to? Do they want to talk to Steve Hansen, or do they want to talk to Richie McCaw?
Exactly right.
Yep. When you're trying to engage people to bring money into the club, and Richie McCaw's the face of your brochures, you know right and well what that stands for.
But you think it's going to be Mitch Barnett?
I do. I think it'll be Mitch Barnett. I think they're going to go with just that. Again, I'm against it. I just think if you're in New Zealand currently building the structures, I think it should be a Kiwi, especially with the talent that we have there at the moment of Fisher Harris and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, that should be your captain. But I think what Mitch Barnett has done is he's been here for a couple of years and he's worked through that stage of getting into the Australian team, that the next reward for him is the captaincy. And by all accounts, it's sort of played out on the training pitch where him and Fisher Harris have had a little bit of a set to with each other too, as you do, which is normal in training sessions, to say who the big dog is. Man, I like that about Fisher Harris. Like, I'm coming into a new house, but it's my house. And I would, for the life of me, put Fisher Harris as your captain, because every kid in New Zealand would want to play with it. I think Roger is for the 80-minute criteria, Roger's your man. But I think what will happen is Mitch Barnett will be captain, and he'll have 3 vice captains, and those other 3 names will be in it. But if it was me, I would say, if I was building it through a set of criteria, I think Fisher Harris currently, having won 4 premierships, off the field, every sponsor knows him. You can talk about premierships and bringing this guy to your pitch. And then on the field, where every player actually wants to play with him because he's won 4 rings and he leads the way, and captains his country, okay, not Penrith, his country. I say that he's probably hitting more criteria marks than Mitch Barnett would ever hit.
Final topic, and I began the podcast today by talking about the International Rugby Sevens, which is just dying, and it's, you disagree if you want, but I mean, just look at the numbers that don't go to these things, the lack of tournaments now, and the fact that nobody really knows when they're playing or what they're playing. And I'm just wondering whether there's a place to bring back the nines, because sevens was for such a long time a marquee sports event in this country. It will never come back into New Zealand, right? They will never have an international 7 series circuit tournament here again. They tried it in Hamilton, it's gone. So we had the nines for a couple of years, and then it faded away, and then it moved to Australia and didn't really work there. Is there a place for rugby league to take, squeeze into that gap that was?
No.
Or no? Or is it just too much league now? And what you face when, obviously, you discuss and debate this, and part of the reason that they killed the nines was that too many players were getting injured playing the nines, and that was them for the rest of the season. And the clubs who actually pay their wages go, no, I'm not having you play that. I'm not having you get injured in that competition.
Yeah. Look, the simple answer to that is no. Like, it's been tried in rugby league as well. Sevens. I've played in the first sevens tournament in the NRL when Newcastle won at Parramatta Stadium. That was played over one day. Right. Remember? And I think we beat St George in the final. And then it extended to the weekend where Wigan come over from England and won it. That was, I think, the following year. And then it's gone through that 7 stage, 9 stage, 10 stage. And even last week, they played an ex-NRL players, nines in Sydney, with I think the Rugby League Players Association team won it, stacked full of ex-NRL players. Mate, I think there's nothing worse than watching ex-footballers run around, carrying extra weight.
Fine in the corporate box, but yeah, I mean, we saw your prime. So.
But I'll tell you what, Marty, this is what they should do with it, is they should get the Wayne Bennett's and the Craig Bellamy's of the world, and the Steve Hansons and the South African guy, what's his name? Rasmussen, together, and they should create a 9s or 10s hybrid game. And
who's going to play that? You're never going to, again, risk your best players.
No, and then what they should do is then they should put it into a little preseason competition where you have to put international players and make international teams where you have, this is what I think, and this is where your mic can go to, where you have international players from each of those countries playing together. And then what you do is you introduce rules in it. So let's have a look at this rule in our game, and let's have a look at this rule in our game, and see if we can implement it into it and create a
calendar.
Well, look, forget about the football. I think people want to see something different. I think the fan today wants to see something different. Look what the UFC done. You know what I mean? They came on. Do people want to watch fights? They don't. We've always wanted to watch fights. We've brought up boxing, boxing men, and now right, it's coming back with the heavyweight division. It's come back. I think in rugby and rugby league, I think the part that they're missing is that innovation, that cricket, the UFC have done to fighting. You know what I mean? And other people have bought things. Motor racing, where you've got so many different types of racing at the moment.
Basketball's tried it.
And if you want to look at how you don't innovate and move forward, just look at softball. Okay? It's been the same for so many years.
Yeah. Still a great sport, though.
It is. So I think this here is an opportunity to do something right out left gate. Get out the back and see if you can pull something together, because people will probably go and watch it.
Let's park that in the think about it department.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics then, roughly minute and a half on each one of those. When the bell reminds us goes ding on to the next topic, we go. And in no particular order, the NRL in Vegas. Well, some of the names that have been thrown around don't get any bigger than the President of the United States and the greatest of all time of the NRL, Tom Brady. We'll talk about that. A statue, speaking of goats, of Novak Djokovic outside Melbourne Park. This has been suggested by Craig Tiley, who is the head of operations for the Australian Open. Rugby this weekend. Are you excited, Lachlan? It is back. Preseason Super Rugby. Israel Adesanya is fighting. I don't know whether we'll get onto that. TGL Golf. Have you watched any of that? Because it is for your generation. Jimmy Butler is sulking. He's doing the Marcus Rashford. He's been suspended again by the Miami Heat. And teenage snowboard superstar Hideyoto Ogiwara has done a 23:40. And why is that so amazing? Let's kick it off with the NRL in Vegas, and Peter V'landys suggesting that he wants Donald Trump involved. And so Don Furner, the Raiders CEO, has thrown his best run across the desk and said he wants Tom Brady to lead the Vikings clap. Now, obviously, they're trying to drum up as much publicity as they can ahead of this event. I get that. But what are the realistic possibilities of either of those guys turning up for the opening match, Warriors Raiders, in March, the NRL?
Donald Trump is not turning up. Don't even try. The US president will have some other meeting on or summit of sorts. Tom Brady, there's a good chance that happens for two reasons. One, obviously, he is a sporting great in the United States. Now,
he also owns, I think, part of the Raiders, doesn't he? In Vegas,
I was going to get to that. He owns part of the Raiders. He is a commentator for Fox Sports, who
covering it.
I think, there you go, are covering it. So there's a few connections, and he was also part of an NRL thing a year ago where it was some sort of function where the Brisbane Broncos, I think, were involved when they met him. So there's already some connections there. So it can happen. It can happen. Will it? I don't know. And it's the off-season for the NFL when that's going on as well, so it's not like he's got too many other duties.
How much is he going to charge for that? Because remember, this guy signed a $360-something million contract just to be a co-commentator in the NFL. So how much is this going to cost?
Oh, a bit. I don't know. The NRL can afford it, can't they? The NRL go on and on and on about all these big aspirations and big ideas and wanting to make their mark, particularly in the United States. I'm sure they're happy to pay whatever it is.
Let's talk about Jimmy Butler since we're in the United States. You love your NBA. He walked out of practice again for the Miami Heat. He's doing what I call a Marcus Rashford. He obviously doesn't want to be there. This is starting to get silly now. He's been suspended 3 times because he's just walking out of practice. What do you do in this situation?
Trade him. Get him out of there.
I agree.
Which is going to happen. There was some stories that came out this morning saying that the Heat are lowering their asking price for him. So they want to get him out of there. They're done. And with what's going on, his value's dropping as well. Not many teams are going to be looking at him going, why would I want this temperamental player on my team who can totally screw up?
Well, has he been temperamental, or does he just want to get out and he's just going, hey, this is the only way I can actually get...
No, he has. Jimmy Butler's had a lot of episodes like this. He did this in Minnesota where he turned up. He was quite hard and critical in some young players, Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, which you could say from a certain perspective is fair, but very harsh on them. That ruined the team chemistry. He had to get traded out of there. Went to Philadelphia. That didn't quite work out. Then he decided to join Miami. He's had moments like this in his past where his attitude and being temperamental has gotten in the way of just a nice, stable playing environment. The fact that it hasn't happened sooner, by the way, with Miami is incredible.
The other question's got to be with him. Look, I mean, he's taken Miami almost single-handedly to a couple of NBA finals.
No, to an extent, sure.
Yeah, and
they've had a pretty good roster for a couple of years.
But he's been instrumental in that. And during the past few seasons, say 2 or 3 seasons ago, he was one of the very best players in the league. How much longer has he got?
Well, he was drafted in 2011. There's a lot of miles in that body, and he has been, for the most part, you're right, the focal point of the Miami Heat. He hasn't got much left.
Who would go for
Well, Phoenix has been the team heavily linked with him for a little while.
But they've bought every old aging superstar and it hasn't worked.
That's a very good point. They made a big splash for Kevin Durant, made a big splash for Bradley Beal, who now they want to get rid of, and now they're going to do another one for Jimmy. That's not going to help Phoenix. I think Golden State are in the mix for it. So, I don't know. He gave a list of teams he wants to go to. One of them was my Lakers, which I beg doesn't happen. I don't think it will. The Lakers don't have the assets to get him. But no, Miami need to get rid of Jimmy Butler as soon as they can.
Rugby this weekend. We've got the Six Nations on and Super Rugby pre-season. So Look, we always moan that, rugby's never any season. If you've been watching the English Premiership or whatever, those games in England, well, you are an absolute diehard. I've taken a couple of months off watching rugby. I've flicked over the channels on a Sunday and watched for 5 or 6 minutes when Geordie Barrett was playing and stuff like that. But I'm actually looking forward to this. The Super Rugby preseason it doesn't mean anything. It's just preseason, right? But the Six Nations this weekend. I love the Six Nations.
I think Ireland, England is one of the first matches, isn't it?
Sunday morning.
Cracking game.
About
Absolute
5:25, I think it's Sunday morning, yeah. Hell of a matchup.
The Six Nations is, you've said this, and I'll piggyback on your take that outside of the World Cup, it is the best competition in the world. Because
I think it's the best annual comp, okay? And then the World Cup comes along every 4 years. And
rugby comp, because
for sure,
unlike the Rugby Championship, you've got, well, actually I can't really say that because last year in the Rugby Championship, didn't Argentina finish second? They were in the hunt for the title at the very end.
Well, they beat everybody.
You've got 3 or 4 teams that win it. For Wales have won a fair few over the last 15, 20 years. Ireland, England and France as well. And Scotland now are a good side. And Italy get the odd scalp. So you've actually got quite a bit of competition. Rugby Championship, I guess, is similar. But no, it's a great comp. And I think you're kicking it off with one of the first 3 games being Ireland, England is spectacular. France-Wales could be a good watch as well.
Super Rugby. So it's here. It's only a couple of weeks away.
I'm stoked. I think the season kicks off on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
The thing that's
so
great.
if you're going out for dinner that night, lads, make sure it's an early one at 5:30. Yeah. Love, I booked us into the restaurant early at 5:30. Why is that?
Or do a lunch. Do a lunch.
Well, nice idea.
Do a lunch.
Nice idea. And I don't know whether this is a statue of Novak outside of Melbourne Park. Look, he probably deserves it given the fact that he's won 10 Australian Opens. However, when you add in the whole, I filled out my immigration form wrong where it said, are you vaccinated? I ticked yes when an actual...
Still bringing that up.
Okay. And then, of course, there's hostilities with the Melbourne crowd and everything. Australia, I mean, if you're going to put a statue up outside a stadium, it's normally one of your own, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't one be of Rod Laver and Margaret Court?
Is there one already of Rod Laver?
Well, they've got...
Surely there is.
They've got the...
You'd have to do one of him and Margaret Court.
Well, they got the courts named after them. How much do you want?
And a statue as well.
Should there be a statue of Novak?
I don't know. What are the rules?
I just think it's going to encourage all those
tennis?
bruised Australian fans to do things to it, is what it is.
Like, I don't know. Do you have a statue of Jack Nicklaus outside of Augusta?
Why not?
Yeah, but would you be open? Is this a thing that these sports do? Like, it's a big thing in the NBA. Statues outside of arenas. All right, we've got a couple of outside of Eden Park. There's a famous Wally Lewis one outside of Lang Park, isn't there?
Yeah. There's a Holy Trinity outside of Old Trafford.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a thing tennis does. Yeah, he's the most successful player on that court at that tournament.
Well, there should be one of Rafa outside.
It's the French, and there probably should be one of Roger outside of Wimbledon if you're
be.
doing the other two.
Yeah.
I mean, then Pete
well, then you've
Sampras
got Ed and Serena,
argue.
and you've got to do a statue of her as well.
Where?
Well, she's won 20-something Grand Slam
US
titles.
Open because she's American.
US Open, yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to it. I mean, as
Okay,
long as
if
there's one of Rod Laver and there's one of Margaret Court.
Okay, here's the question. If they're going to do it, did they have to get Novak's approval? Would you? You'd have to, wouldn't you? You'd have to say, do you want a statue of yourself outside?
No, you can
there?
just do it, can't you?
And remember when they did one of Cristiano Ronaldo a couple of years ago, and it was just the weirdest looking statue ever.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing.
I can't imagine.
Can I look at it first, please, before you put it up, so that it actually, I want to see what it looks. It looks like me.
Yeah. Do you think? Well, what they should do is they should get one of Novak, and they should just have like a little needle and like inside his arm or something.
See, now we're talking.
Or no, put a face mask on it.
Yeah. Or there's a customs guy running down the street just about.
He's actually just running away from customs. There we go. That's the statue.
Finally, and I got to read this to get it right. The teenage snowboarder Hiroto Ogiwara, I hope I pronounced that right, landed the first ever 2340 trick at the X Games.
What is that?
It is rotating 6.5 times in the air. He got gold in the big air. Now, previous to that, he did a 2160, which is 5 vertical and 6 horizontal rotations. I'm just thinking about 6.5. Like, you know, I mean, I get dizzy these days.
Well, if you stand up too fast.
Jeez, because I'm too old. But just, I watched the footage of him doing this, and it's just wild. I mean, the G-forces that he does, the speed he generates. I mean, it is a wow moment in world sport.
It's also the thing that always gets me with these tricks.
I love it when they take it to new heights, mate. That's what I love. I mean, they try new tricks and they must practice them 1,000,000 times and fall over 1,000,000 times to pull it off in competition for the very first time. It's like Tony Hawk, you know, doing the 900 or whatever it was on the skateboard.
I think what's more impressive is the point at which, and we never see this, but so I'm imagining the incredible nature of this, that there's a point surely that when you get these tricks or you get the blueprint of this 2350, 700, whatever it's called, that they've got to actually do the initial phase of it at some point, and when you get to that point, you're overcoming a lot of fear over what if I have actually gotten my physics or calculations wrong and I need to actually do it less times, because if I do it too many, by the time I get to that last spin, well, my head's in the ground and I've just broken my neck.
That's it.
So there's a lot of
There's
guts
a big
to
danger
actually
element
just
to this,
start,
eh?
because
Yeah.
I can never get my head around that, let alone doing a trick and then doubling the amount of spins you're doing on it, right?
Yeah. So there's courage, there's skill,
And these are kids.
and then there's the absolute cojones to pull it off in a competition, which is the biggest event in the world and what you do.
A lot of these athletes are really young. They're late teens, early 20s.
He's 20 years old.
Man.
Just amazing. Have a look at it. It is just amazing.
Martin Devlin.
Every Wednesday on the show, what a pleasure this is. The old mate Miles Davis joins us. Welcome back, son.
Yeah, good to be back, old bean.
Premier League to talk about. We'll talk about the Six Nations coming up this weekend, how your mob's going to go in that, as well about Super Bowl and my lot taking it right up the chutter. But I celebrate a great season with the Commanders anyway. But let's start with the Premier League. And we've got the Jimmy Butler story on the show today, him walking out of training, not wanting to be with the Miami Heat. Well, the same situation is happening in England with my Man United striker Marcus Rashford, who the manager Amarim has said, I'd rather pick the 63-year-old goalkeeper. He's not fronting up for training. He's not putting the effort in. I'm on the manager's side here, mate. I just think, listen, son, you're getting paid 300,000 or 400,000 quid a week. You scored 140 goals for United. You should be a club legend. But instead, your fanny's sore and you're sulking, and I don't have time for it.
I'm 100% there with you, mate. The reality is, it does sound a bit brutal from the manager, but I think we've grown into an era now where people are, trying to do the PC thing and be really kind about it. I think everything Amarim said is legit.
Sounds true.
Rashford wasn't showing up when he was playing. I mean, you're a fan. You watch him, week in, week out. When you can
Doesn't put the yards in, mate. Doesn't make tackles. Doesn't chase back, Miles. No.
And his attitude's obviously not good enough. And he's got a club that's in a relative crisis, for the history of the club in the last 30 odd years. So he's a senior player now. He's not that kid who scored that great goal against Man City all those years ago. He's a senior player now, and he's just not fronting up. So I'm 100% with Amarim on this. And it takes me back to an era. Do you remember the Brian Cloughs and the Don Revis and the Malcolm Allisons and the Ron Atkinsons would be quite open about
Harry Redknapp. Same day, Darren Bent. What did he say? My missus would have scored that.
No, the Harry Redknapp and Ron Atkinson. Do you remember the Harry Redknapp when he was being interviewed at training and some guy shoots and hits the ball, it's Redknapp on the back, and he turns around and looks at him and then turns back and he looks at you trying to hit a goal and you hit me, and he looks at the guy who goes, no wonder he's in the bloody reserves.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
And the Ron Atkinson when he signed Daly and Atkinson, I think when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, big black player. And a journo rang him and said, "Oh, are you related?" He said, "No." He said, "But as soon as the crowd starts shouting Atkinson out, I'm selling him."
You're right, though. I mean, this day and age, all of a sudden, an outpouring of empathy and sympathy for a guy that's just not putting the physical effort in. Another big story before we actually get into the Premier League is about David Coote, the referee, who has come out now and said that the reason he's sacked as a referee is, look, he got caught, the sun busted him from snorting coke, all of that kind of stuff. He had the video that was filmed where he was given a bit of stick to Jurgen Klopp, and he said he's been struggling with his sexuality, he's gay, he's come out, all of this kind of stuff. Is any of this a reason or an excuse for his behaviour? Sidebar to that being, is any of it a reason or an excuse why he shouldn't be reinstated if he's a good referee?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, though, mate. Firstly, who amongst us doesn't get involved in a bit of hanky-panky as you grow up over the years, especially if you're living in England where, temptations are awash wherever you look. Also, who's stitching him up? Who's
good
videoing it? Is it some guy undercover from the Sun, or is it one of the people that he thinks he can trust?
That's right. Yeah.
So we get that out. In terms of the sacking, it's the day and age. There'll probably be something in his contract where they'll justify it. But in terms of him coming out and the pressure that he's under, I've no doubt that it's massive. Even in this day and age where we're supposedly more accepting of alternative lifestyles. Not that I suppose being gay nowadays is all.
I don't think it's alternative,
and it shouldn't be. It reminded me of, people say, it's all accept now, there's no pressure. Nigel Owens, I don't know if you ever saw a fantastic interview with him.
I've seen that,
the Welsh referee who came out as well, talking about when he was young and he just felt awkward because he thought, blimey, I'm not meant to be like this. I'm meant to be going out with women, and he tried to do it. And in the end, it got so stressful, he tried to commit suicide. And even to this day, he sort of cringes and feels awful the way what he put his parents through as he's lying there in hospital and the parents are coming to visit him. And also in the rugby world as well, Carwyn James, the magnificent manager of the Lions over here. And also, I mean, he was the guy who beat the All Blacks 3 years on the trot in 3 different teams. So with the Barbars, with Llanelli and with the British Lions, he was living a life of gay sort of undercover as such, and ended up dying all alone at a relatively young age in a hotel in Amsterdam. So the pressures are great there. Can you imagine if he'd have come out and been honest right from the beginning or halfway through his career? Yeah, football crowds are just merciless. He would have been copping so much stick. And I don't know whether, I think he should be reinstated.
I think he should be too. If he's a good referee. If he's a good referee, and you look at what he's actually done, slagging Jürgen, he's taken a few drugs, and you know, test all the players on after a Saturday night, and slag a manager, In terms of the Premier League, Man City about to get on one of those Man City runs where, I mean, all of a sudden I looked at the table over the weekend. I haven't been doing this for weeks, obviously. They're up to 4th already. Are they going to go on one of those, we're going to win 10 games, 11 games in a row, and maybe inch into 2nd place above Arsenal? I think the title's already done and dusted. Liverpool are way too good for everybody else. But a Man City about to do a Man City? Yeah,
I really think they are. I mean, firstly, you look at, they've had some key injuries, but none more key than Rodri. And, if you ever doubt it, I mean, Pep Guardiola has always said for the last few seasons how important Rodri is and what a great player he is. And I think we all accept that. But since he's been out, that's when the struggle started. They've lost some other key players. But you look at it now, and talk was always in the attacking sense of Kevin De Bruyne. But you look at the form now of Phil Foden, for instance, like he's really hitting his straps. He's taking a bit of pressure off of Erling Haaland. Haaland is, he can do bugger all in the game, but you give him half a chance.
Well, against Chelsea, mate. Brilliant goal. Brilliant goal. Miles, he's at the halfway line. There's a defender with him. He heads it past him, has a look where the keeper is. Keeper does a crazy thing, comes out. But that was all his goal out of nothing. That was just a big wog from the keeper up the field, one header into space. I was just sitting there stunned by it.
Well, I think you're being a bit unfair on Edison there, because you say it's a big wog, but he looks for it. I mean, I think that's the 5th assist he's got. And if you ever watch him play, he fancies himself as a footballer. He's got great feet, especially for a keeper.
Well, get out of the goal and get out from the field then, son.
Someone's got to go in. He happens to be a good goalkeeper as well. Now he can do both things. But he looks for those things. He looks for those passes. And sometimes they come off. And then this time, if you've got someone like him or Mo Salah, for instance, on the other end of it, 1-0. Although I know it wasn't 1-0, it was later. But
the Moyes sire has gone back to Everton, they've got a couple of crucial wins under this guy. We had him at Man U, it didn't work. You had him at West Ham, you didn't like him either. Is he the answer for Everton, and why does he work at that club?
Well, I mean, he's a legend at Everton. I don't know if you've spoken to our mate Matt and what he thinks about it.
He's happy, mate. He's happy as long as this is Matt McLaughlin, good old mate from Wellington. Look, he's happy as long as they're getting 3 points. They've only scored, 19 goals in 23 games. He just wants to... well, of course he wants to avoid... They've got a new stadium this year. He don't want to be playing Scunthorpe and Doncaster in that stadium, mate.
Everton, you see. We don't care. I'm West Ham, mate. I want to see football being played. I don't give a monkeys if we get relegated. I'll still support them, and it'll be cheaper to go in, and there'll be more space so I can move my elbows.
It's about winning, mate. It's about winning. That's what it's about.
No, it's not. Football's an entertainment thing. The fact that money's come in and made it obscene, that's turned it into this obsession with winning all the bloody time. There's ways of winning. How come teams like Barcelona and the likes and Man City even can win games by playing football? It's not. If
well,
you give it a go.
But
if you look at Moyes, that last win in particular down there, he's going to do the same thing. When Allardyce went to Everton, I warned Matt. I said, mate, you may get a few points, but you're going to want to get rid of him in a few months. Moyes, all right, 31% possession, 3 shots, 1 on target in the whole game, which ended up in the back of the net, 1 corner. Brighton, 18 or 16 shots or 18 shots.
Yeah.
You know, like Brighton, 9 corners, but they just couldn't do the thing. Same with Forest. I mean, that Forest game, you want to talk about them quickly.
Wow.
They 5-0, absolutely.
5-0.
Bournemouth were on form. But again, if you look at the stats in that game, I think Forest had 18 shots to 16. It was the shots on target that made them. I think they even had more corners, 9-3 or something like that. They had equal amount of possession. In fact, might have even shaded it. It's like,
is that just a blip in their season, mate? Is that like just one of those results? And Forest are just got to go, well, I don't know what happened there. Let's just put it behind us, flush the dunny, do the Steve Hansen, and move on from that.
It depends how big the log is in the Carsey. If you can flush it down, or whether you've got to get a stick and try and break it up.
Yeah, well,
it's easy for us sitting here to go, oh, it's only one result, and you can look at the stats. But what's it doing up here?
Yeah, that's right.
What's it doing in the head?
Does it cause some doubt? It's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks, isn't it?
Then they're in trouble.
Spurs, how much longer before they do what they always do? You know, manager comes along, has a great first season. You know, both of us have got a lot of time for Postecoglou. I love his story. I love the fact that, you know, guy from Aussie is in the Premier League managing, all of that. He tries to play football, everything else, but they're having a wretched time, mate. What, they've lost 6 or 7. I know you love it because you hate your Spurs and everything else. But, you know, the Premier League's just it does not wait for anybody, does it? And when you're sitting there in 15th or 16th place and you're a club like that expect to be a hell of a lot higher up the table, how much longer has he got?
I'm surprised he hasn't already gone. I would have thought that Leicester game would have been his last. Had they, you know, got a decent result there and kicked on, then fair enough, he might have stayed alive. But I've got to say, I'm shocked. You lose at home to Leicester. Yeah, and this isn't the Leicester.
I loved it. Ruud van Nistelrooy in charge. I loved it, mate. Absolutely.
Of course you would, mate. He's one of your mates. You know, of course you're going to love it. And I don't think anyone in the game hates Ruud van Nistelrooy, so they're going to be happy. And I don't think too many people in the game love Tottenham. But I feel sorry for him, for Postecoglou. I like him. I like the style of football he tries to play. I like his attitude. But for whatever reason, it's not clicking. And again, you start looking in the background. He's quite an abrasive character. Has he upset the precious little girls in the dressing room? I don't mean to insult girls. If you're a boy, you don't want to be called a girl, do you?
Well, it's all changed these days, mate. I mean,
well, yeah, fair enough.
I don't know.
Into that one,
Let's not get into that. 2 topics to finish with, then. Super Bowl will park for a second. 6 Nations kicking off this weekend. The greatest international rugby tournament on an annual basis. You know, I love the World Cup. I rate the World Cup up there but that's only every 4 years. Every single year we get this tournament. It's absolutely brilliant viewing. It brings in all the geopoliticalness of these nation states playing each other, as well as what goes on a rugby field. And we've talked about this last year as well. Your mob, you know, it was a width of a post against New Zealand. It was an injury time try against Australia. You beat Ireland in last year's 6 Nations, I remember, with that last second drop goal. And I know that everyone looks at Ireland and France and thinks they're the 2 top teams. But I mean, I don't think England's ever a dark horse at rugby, but I'm interested to see how you go. And I think you're probably going to surprise.
I would like to think so. I'd like to. I look at everything like you mentioned there. And I mean, we only just lost to France in Paris last year by 2 points. Although, having said that, we only just beat Wales and we only just beat Italy. So maybe it's, you know, it's just
balances
a close
it out a bit.
Tournament for us last year. But I look at I think there's been an improvement. He's made some changes. I think Marcus Smith at first 5 is magnificent. Fascinated to see Ben Curry and Tom Curry playing, you know, twins for the first time playing for England, either side of the scrum. I look at that whole tournament and I think there's no reason why England can't do reasonably well, but they've got to start well. And against Ireland, you can't get a tougher fixture, really.
It's a marquee matchup,
than going to Dublin. I think it's about 5 or 6 years since we last won in Dublin. Like I said, we beat them by 1 point last year, but they were already home and hosed, I think, as far as the championship went. So I'm not going to read too much into that. I look around it and I think, you know, Italy, for me, I want to watch Italy. See, are they going to progress? When they had 2 wins last year.
Andrew with France, mate. Andrew with France.
You know?
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Wales, are they? I mean, how's Devlin still got a job?
They're going to win a game.
I've no idea how he's still got a job. And they finished bottom. Only the second time in the history of the tournament that Wales have finished bottom. The last time was 2003 and they didn't win a game.
Step.
They were 7 points adrift at the bottom as well. It wasn't as if it was close. Are Scotland going to keep on the improve, or have they sort of reached their peak now and they're going to go on a slide down? And the French, you never know what you're going to get with the French. It's always been the case, and I think it'll be the case now. They're quite capable of winning it. They're quite capable of blowing it. But I agree with you. I think England will finish in the top 2. Yeah, I'm going to say that now.
All right, Super Bowl to finish with, and obviously I'm sitting tenderly at the moment because my commander's just got absolutely chutted by a brilliant Eagles performance on Monday. So Philadelphia from the NFC side play KC. We're going for the 3-peat. The two best teams, I mean, both of them are outstanding. How do you look at this one? I mean, because they're a divisional rival with me, I don't want the Eagles to win, but I don't also want Kansas City to create history. So, yeah, God.
It's quite, I mean, I like the attitude of the Eagles fans. They're absolutely mental. And it would have been great to see the Bills and there. Maybe the only other mob was the Raiders when they played in Oakland. That would have been quite good to see them. But the Philadelphia Eagle fans are absolutely insane.
These are the ones, people, that snowballed Santa, okay?
Yeah.
And they do it to their own players as well.
Exactly. I love them for that sort of reason. Apart from anything else, I'm with you with the Chiefs. I don't want them to go on and win it. They're liable to sneak their way through like they have done in previous years. But I think the biggest thing that's against the Chiefs is this sort of obsession with Taylor Swift. Every game, and there she is sort of preening around old Travis Kelce, and look, there's Taylor. Focus on the game, mate.
You focus on the game. Oh, look, I mean, this is the whole... I totally agree with you here. Look, I don't want to see any other players' girlfriend, so I know it's just there to get ratings and because they brought in this Taylor Swift audience and that. But look, I mean, just give us what we're actually sitting here to watch, which is the game of football. But then again, we're a couple of old guys, mate, and we'll get shouted down by those that do the marketing of this sport.
Can I just say one more thing? We'll talk about NFL. I mean, the NRL's going to Vegas and they're going to do the big business over there. Warriors playing the Raiders. And the Raiders want to try and get Tom Brady to blow their horn and lead the whole Viking clap for them. I reckon that to retaliate, the Warriors do a massive haka and either in the middle, have Donald Trump or Gisele Bundchen. If they're going to get Brady that side, get Gisele on this side with all the Warriors around her doing a big haka. I think that would be magnificent.
Call the promotions department.
I will do.
That's our podcast and show for today. Again, if you're liking what you're listening and what you're seeing, then a small favour, if you will. Can you please hit like, share, subscribe, follow, tell a friend about it. We are a fledgling podcast and show, the DSPN, and we need you. And if you are participating, well, just click that subscribe button. That would help enormously. Thank you so much if you already have. Again, tell a friend if you like. We're doing this every single day, putting out a show every afternoon. The DSPN.
This is the DSPN.